Um, Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. This is a really exciting program because I had the opportunity to speak with so many graduates from SPHS with all sorts of very interesting stories. And I tried to compile a broad spectrum of different people so that everyone could see the pathways that are maybe not necessarily thought of right away. College these days is, for some people, unattainable, whether it be the cost or just difficult to get admitted, much more so than ever before. So we thought it would be a great idea to just illustrate some great success stories from SPHS that maybe aren't things that you would typically think about. My first guest is Haley Verculin, and she is actually still being educated right now. But what's interesting about her story is that she seemed to know exactly what she wanted to do while she was still in high school, which is pretty unusual. And she came up with an amazing plan to make sure that she could pay for all of the education that she needed. So Haley, are you there?
Yes, I am here.
There she is. So Haley, give us a little bit of history while you were at SPHS.
So I graduated from SPHS in 2018. I went to SPMS, I went to Arroyo Vista, I went to Calvary Preschool, and I knew exactly what I wanted to do when I was probably in my sophomore year of high school. I knew I wanted to go into the medical field. After volunteering and shadowing at different hospitals. And since then, I was very determined to get to that point.
And I think when we spoke before, what was really impressive is she decided to go to community college, which is not unusual. And it's one of the great common themes of a lot of these stories. But she chose to move to a different state, right? Where did you go?
So I moved to South Carolina in the few months after I graduated high school. I moved to a very small town called Florence, South Carolina. I went to a community college there for about a year and a half, and which my goal was just a year, but things happen and it was a year and a half. And then I transferred my sophomore year to the University of South Carolina.
And so now you've set yourself up with a path to a medical degree. What sort of a doctor would you like to be?
So I want to be an OBGYN.
And so you're transferring, you're at the University of South Carolina now?
Yes, correct.
Yeah. And so, by moving to a different state and establishing residency there through the community college experience, which is relatively inexpensive, then she was able to slide into the state school at a very low rate. And you're just very determined, Haley. I think I don't think I've met anyone that had their life figured out so quickly the way you did. So I think that's a great story. I wanted to ask you a couple questions about your time at SPHS. Was there anyone there that you recall that you found to help you make decisions or have a pivot or motivated?
So in middle school, actually, I had a teacher. She was my English teacher and then my history teacher, Miss Lindsay Bruce, who was known to me as Miss Mercer. She was always such a special teacher to me. And even in high school, I used to go back and visit her, and she was just so encouraging and honestly just made a huge difference in, middle school and high school and even now.
How did you feel about South Pasadena as a community? Did that have any impact on your trajectory?
So I grew up in South Pasadena. Like I said, I went to Calvary and then Arroyo Vista and then SPMS and SPHS. So I was there for 17 years. And you're around the same people from preschool to senior year of high school, and I think I was just ready to move along and be somewhere new and experience something new. So I like South Pass, and it's always going to be my home, and I love visiting on holidays and everything, but I was just ready for a change and something new.
You're ready to go. I get it. Ready to get out of here. So is there any sort of advice that you could pass along to young graduates and their parents about what maybe postgraduate life looks like?
Yes. So what I would say is to keep going and keep pushing no matter what. The hard days, they turn into better ones. And I think that every success is a big success, no matter how small it may seem. And there's such a huge world outside of high school, and it's bigger and it's better. And high school is a little bubble. And I think that as a high schooler, I forgot about that. And I know that high schoolers probably think the same thing. And I think that taking things day by day is so important. And every step, even if it's little, is a step forward, and it's important. So.
Great. Well, your story is very, very inspirational. Thank you so much for sharing it with us.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we're going to move on to one of our counselors, because we have an excellent counseling department at SPHS, and they were very helpful in this process of me trying to find people that could share their stories. So I am passing it on to Miss Marcela Montoya, and she's going to speak a little bit.
Thanks, Jenny. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. So I have the honor and pleasure of introducing our next two guest speakers. But first, I just want to kind of throw this idea out there to everyone. I think many, if not most adults, will tell you that the path in front of you is rarely straight, but it's the twists and turns that allow you to focus in on your purpose and what it is that brings you joy and fulfillment. So I'm thankful to have this opportunity to just highlight two spectacular SPHS alum. So I had the honor of serving as a counselor at SPHS back when these two were sophomores. And it was during our student parent sophomore counseling chats that I discovered that while his parents and I could clearly see his potential, he had not yet fully become aware of what was within his reach. And through these discussions and his willingness to explore different courses, Bobby Kabara launched onto a path that pushed him out of his comfort zone a bit, but it was one that also allowed him to find a healthy balance. He continued on to my alma mater, where he zeroed in on his passion, preparing him for his role as Deputy Director of the Census 2020 initiative for the office of Mayor Eric Garcetti. He is a go-getter and continues to seek out opportunities to continue his personal and professional growth and development. Along his journey at SPHS, he met his dear friend Kai Matsukuma, who's also here with us tonight. I knew Bobby and Kai and their group of friends to be loyal, fun-loving, supportive, and tight-knit. And even while each of them have gone their own directions professionally, they continue to serve as constant supports in each other's lives. Kai's story is inspiring because he is someone who can attest to the twists and turns, but it's his tenacity and willingness to forge ahead, branch out, and try something new. Basically, take a risk on yourself and what makes you feel alive and purposeful that provides our current students with hope. Kai's LA-based clothing brand and media platform, Sango, dedicates each artist collection to a unique artist. Their clothing is a wearable story for the purpose of finding your truth, which I love. And he'll soon share a little bit more about that. But it's much more than a clothing line. It's an opportunity for people to connect, uplift, and give back to their community through art. Bobby's and Kai's stories are a testament to the fact that students from SPUSD are provided the knowledge, skills, experiences, and support to launch out into the world with drive, initiative, and a desire to do good. It goes without saying that it's an honor to know them both and to see them as the incredible adults they are today. And with that, Jenny, I pass it back to you.
Okay, great. That was lovely. Thank you, Marcel. So Bobby, we're going to start with you. You have quite a story. I think let's start in high school. So you graduated 2012, and tell us from what I recall from our conversations, sports made a huge impact on you in high school. Is that correct?
Yeah, definitely a huge impact. But really quickly, just want to thank Marcio for the intro. And, I definitely would credit her, as she mentioned, with pushing me and supporting me to do more. There was a lot of conversations of, well, I don't know if I really should be in that AP class. And she would be like, yes, you should be. And you should, take that leap to do it. And so really helped give me the confidence to in college and thereafter to do more. So sports was definitely a huge part of it. Was on the track and field team and the basketball teams, and was able to have some co-captain opportunities there as well. And then I think also the friends I had on the sports teams and outside of sports was a huge part of it. Kai and I our group of friends has stayed close to this day. I've known Kai since I was 5 years old, and a lot of my other friends in the group, we've known each other since we were less than 10. So yeah, big role as well.
So when you did attend you went to UCSB, and then just learned that you were interested in sociology, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then once you got out of school, you took you did a lot of internships, right?
Yeah, a lot of internships during the summers, and then did a graduate public affairs fellowship after college.
And give us a quick sort of run through of your fantastic career so far, because it's just a lot.
Sure. Yeah. So in studying sociology at UCSB, took a lot of classes that had to do with the way people of color are represented in the media. So after college, I felt sort of the intersection of entertainment and social impact was what I wanted to do. I worked for a company called Participant Media right after graduating, and then applied for this fellowship called Coro, which really showed me how much I still had to learn about making measurable, impactful changes. So during Coro, which by the way, there is a high school version of the program. So if any of your kids are interested, anyone's interested, please do check it out. It's spelled CORO. But for a year, they place you in different sectors to work in different sectors, about a month each: government, business, nonprofit, unions, communication, etc. And through that process, I was introduced to the incoming census, and pitched a project to the mayor's office to do some initial assessment of what our count was going to look like in Los Angeles. After that, that was part of the fellowship. Once that ended, I spent about 2 years doing some independent consulting work. So I worked for the LA County Economic Development Corporation, connecting community colleges to the emerging digital media sector in LA, and then also did some research for an organization called Community Partners on the influence of Asian and Asian Americans in Southern California politics and government. After that, the director of the census for the city reached out to me because of the research I had done, and decided to bring me on as the deputy director. Then spent 2 years with the city, sort of developing within the city departments in a partnership with the county, but also a coalition about 50 or so community organizations, faith leaders, other sort of influential, trusted voices in the community to get the word out about the census. Due to Trump and due to COVID, that job was a little longer than I had originally anticipated. And because of the work I had done, sort of putting that coalition together, a group reached out to me within the city that they were launching a free banking program, as well as government disbursements on an accessible banking platform. So the organization is called Mobility Capital Finance. We launched this program last year called Angelino Connect, which does two things. It's free banking for low-income residents, undocumented residents, really anyone that there's over 500,000 folks in LA that can't access banking services. So that's half of it. And then the other half is we operate the guaranteed basic income programs for the city and the county of LA. So for the past about year and a half, I've been their senior community engagement manager based in LA. and we're a startup, a financial technology startup. So we're expanding nationally, but LA is thus far our biggest program.
Okay, that's as I said, it's a lot. It's a big wow.
Yeah, sorry if I was a little
You've been
long-winded
busy.
there.
No, you've been super busy. Well, that's amazing. Thank you so much. I'm going to move on to Kai now. Are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, there you are.
Kai.
Yeah, these guys are buddies, so we thought we would pair them together. So Kai, tell us about, you also had a sports connection with SPHS that you felt like was very influential in your life. Tell us about that.
Yeah, growing up, same with Bobby, you know, basketball was like our life, and it was definitely my biggest passion and purpose. Like I was in middle school, high school, wanting to go to the NBA. And so you know, reality kicked in. Only 5'10", couldn't make it. But I mean, not that, you know, you can't make it in the NBA that if you're 5'10", but you know, that was something that was really important to me growing up, was, you know, putting my whole, you know, motivation, like love into that sport. And, you know, when I started off, of course, as everyone is, they're not that great, right? But when you put a lot of time into it and love it, then you're gonna grow and you're gonna get better and you're gonna just fall in love with it, hopefully, right? And so it's not about just basketball or what, but I mean, sports or anything. It's just being in love with something, you know, being in love with an activity or certain subject. And that was the most important thing to me that I got from basketball, was being able to translate that into my career after high school.
And so you did go to college, and you went to Santa Monica Community College and then also Chapman. So you got a real job. This is a common theme here tonight. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So, you know, in high school, I wasn't a good student, to be honest. You know, I didn't put my focus into school, and it's just like basketball was the thing that called me. And so then when I graduated, I was like, oh man, how am I going to do this? You know, I was like, I have to go to community college. Now I have to focus on getting into a good school. So I went to community college, and then I just put, you know, my focus into that, and then was able to transfer to Chapman University over in Orange County, which is like a small little private school. And essentially from there, I became fascinated in marketing from the classes that I was taking. Then I went into working at a creative ad agency. So essentially working on branding and campaigns for different brands. So I was fortunate to work with like HBO and Netflix, Google, Amazon. So I got to work with a lot of fun brands. And so that's what I still do to this day. But I also have that main priority is the clothing brand. I'm just fortunate enough to have that job that I do really like, and be able to fund what I truly love, which is Songo, the clothing brand that I have.
So what you're doing with the clothing brand is really quite impressive. You pick a subject and you do a whole roundabout with full like description, celebration of that person, and it comes through your writing, your filmmaking, and a clothing line.
Yeah.
And he's funding all of this with his real job, but he's starting to make some money on the passion project. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. So essentially the things that I really loved doing from high school to college was writing, making videos. I always loved clothing. I just never thought I was able to design clothes. And I love events, you know, like everyone loves going to parties, going to events and shows and stuff like that. And so I just wanted to put it all together in one. And so I did a clothing brand. So what I do is I collab with different artists that I really like and have a really good, inspiring story. So I write about them, doing a little, probably like 10-paragraph write-up, something super short, telling about like what their background is, how they had challenges throughout their journey, how they overcame it, how they became successful. And then also I shoot a little documentary of them telling their story as well. And then we create clothing to tell another part of their story. And then we have an event to put everything together and showcase it to the crowd. And so, yeah. Sorry, what was the original question?
No, that was it. That was it. I just wanted you to
Okay.
describe the holistic process that you have of featuring each of the athletes. I guess the last thing, if you could share with us, would be the advice to the young graduates.
Yeah, my advice is just paying close attention to what you truly love. You know, you're still so young, and I'm sure not a lot of you know exactly what you like, but for me, like, for example, the brand and how I do articles and documentaries and do clothing, it was just me paying attention to the things that I really like doing. And so I was able to tie it all into one, and it's finally starting to pick up. And it's really just staying tuned with that, you know, make sure that you're investing time and just going and doing it. And if it's something that's sparking interest, go and give it a shot. Try to do it for like a certain amount of time, learn about it, actually try to grow within it, and then see if you like it or don't. But at least you know if you like it or you don't. You know, that's the most important thing. So for so long, I was always saying, I want to do this, I want to do that. And that was, I think my biggest problem was always just saying all these things I wanted to do rather than just doing it. And once I actually did it, then I was like, okay, I don't like this, or I don't want to. And then also, you know, a really important thing that I tried to talk about with the brand as well is making sure that your mental is good. You know, you got to make sure, and not, you know, mental health is such a big talk, meditation, right? But just understanding how you talk to yourself is so important, because it's the way you talk to yourself is who you become. You know, and so you have to really understand that, pay attention to how you're speaking. You have to speak very highly about yourself to yourself, and just becoming aware of that. And I think that's really important, because it all comes from you. It all starts with you. And so you just have to be proud of yourself, and you have to keep going and being strong. And that's all.
Yeah, no, that's excellent advice. It's absolutely core to success, I think. So also another really impressive graduate. Thank you so much, Kai, for sharing your story with us. So we're going to move on to a graduate from 1984. Actually, his name is Steve Teep. And he was born in South Pasadena. Steve, you there?
If you can hear me, I assume I'm here.
Yep, you're there. You're there. So start by telling us, you have some really fascinating, deep history, right, in South Pasadena. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, my grandmother moved here from Rantoul, Illinois when she was 1 year old back in 1909, graduated South Pasadena High School in 1927. And both my mother and father met in South Pasadena, and both graduated from South Pasadena High School as well.
That's great. Okay. So your story, you went through SPHS, and you were a little restless, right? And you decided you needed to move along. So he actually, you got your GED, right?
Yes, very early actually in high school. So.
And then you went and you did, and where did you go after that?
I went into the gardening field. I became a gardener originally, and just because I didn't feel the schooling was the right fit for me. But later, I did go back and do a little bit of community college through Cal Poly Pomona and get some of the certifications and stuff, and ultimately started a business, and I got my contractor's license. But I turned that gardening from a very young age into a landscape company.
So so you became an entrepreneur. You started your own business, and then after a certain amount of time, that business did really well, and then you were able to become an investor. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I started investing in homes and doing flip homes before it was a famous thing to do. It used to be a lot easier when prices were, of course, a little bit more reasonable. But yeah, I started buying houses as I think I bought my first house when I was around 26 years old. and outside of South Pasadena, but then ultimately was able to catapult that into moving back into our wonderful town of South Pasadena and putting my son through our South Pasadena school system as well.
And I asked you about who you could recall at the high school that was an inspiration to you. And this is super interesting because this small group of people that we're speaking to tonight, Steve was not the only one to mention this teacher. So who was that?
Well, Mr. Titus, but the one that you're referring to, Mr. Penn, Gary Penn. Our most of the teachers that really influenced me were on the wood shop and the photography classes and more of the elective side of the education. They really taught me a lot, and I was able to, and one math teacher, but Mr. Gary Penn was a wonderful teacher and still is.
And you did have a passion for photography and art.
Yes.
So that's also like a common theme. I feel like a lot of the people that I spoke to had creative ambitions, but decided to figure out a way to make an income that they enjoyed so that they could then pursue that. And what you did was you exercised your creative passions through your landscape design, right?
Yes, I did. And a landscape company it was an irrigation company that turned into a landscape company that bought a tree service company that then, we've expanded into full service landscaping, I guess you would say now. So.
That's great. Okay. Well, Steve, thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. So now we are going to move on to a graduate from 1971, Mr. Jody Smith. Jody, are you there? I think you're muted. Let me see if I can fix it.
How's that?
There you go. There you go.
Hey,
hello. Welcome.
We didn't have computers in high school. So I'm still working on it. I'm doing fine. Thank you for having me.
You're doing great. So you graduated in 1971, and I'm trying to think of a good way without spilling the beans on how fantastic you are. I'm trying to think of a good way of explaining it.
Oh, please.
Jody Smith is a firefighter. He fought fires in the forest up in Big Bear and Lucerne Valley, and also in our city of South Pasadena for 12 years, right?
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about how you got into that.
Well, in high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So, after high school, I went on a little road trip for a couple of years, and I came back and I started going to the fire department. And Willie Isley, I think he's class of 62, worked there, and he said, "Hey, why don't you become a fireman?" And, so I started hanging out more, and I started taking classes. And I think my first job was down in Orange County. So I really wasn't inspired. I told my dad when I was 18, I wanted to be a hot shot, and he just said, "No, you don't. That's on a hot shot crew for the forest." So I didn't really have an inspiration out of high school to become a fireman. It was something that kind of came afterwards.
And so you had a little setback. You had on one of your calls, you had an injury, right?
Yeah, I messed my knee up, and I had 3 surgeries on that, and I just didn't want any more. And that was kind of the end of my city career, so to speak.
And your dad, tell us about your dad real quick.
Oh, my dad, he went to South Pass, but I think he was there right in World War II, so he had left to go to war. I don't think he ever finished high school, but my uncles and aunts, we're all from the South Pass. I had one of my daughters graduated there, a bunch of my cousins, all our family. We're a huge family from the South Pass. There's a lot of us. But yeah, my dad was a forest ranger. He started up in at the Angeles and the CCC's post before the war. Then he went to work for the Forest Service after he came back, and that's where I grew up until I came to South Pass in 1960.
Yeah, so you grew up with a forest ranger fire.
Yes.
Yeah, man,
Yeah.
it's a, that must have been an amazing experience. And then you shared with me earlier that there's a big difference between firefighters in the forest and then firefighters in urban situations. I think people would be interested to know, for any of their kids that might be interested in fighting fires, a little about the difference there that you were explaining to me.
Well, you see the in the city, you have the type 1 engines, the big stuff. They handle all the medical aids, the structure fires. It's all, about prevention. There's all kinds of things going on in the city department. On the wildland side, you're not involved too much, depending on where you might be stationed, but your mission statement at that point is wildland fires. And so, but it's always life, natural resources, life always came first. And then, the wildland fire.
And so in the urban environments, you were exposed to a lot of tragedy because the firemen, they have to show up on calls, crisis situations, things like that. And did they have counseling back then?
No, we didn't have counseling. It was more in-house. We would discuss things, our kid around. There wasn't any post-traumatic incident debriefings that we have now. So it was kind of a something that you learn to deal with, and you kind of put it away in a box until you learn to deal with it. But it was mostly how we did it in-house. Now there's they have crisis teams for that type of thing, and it's much needed, because people call you for a reason, and it's not usually a good one. So right. That's part of the job. It's inherent to being a firefighter. It's very dangerous, very demanding in the city. It is physically in the wildland, but you can work a little bit around a wildland fire. And a structure fire, you get there, you get off, the guys go in. It's a little more hazardous, in my opinion. There's a lot more toxins and things in the city departments, although they pay much more. And they're paramedics now and firefighters. You would have to go through paramedic school and a firefighter type of training or education in junior college to start applying for a city job, as opposed to in a wildland. You can apply through either Cal Fire or usajobs.gov, for the government. So there's a lot of avenues you can take, but the difference is mostly the physical demand. You're out there for days on a wildland fire. In a city fire, you might have to perform for 15, 20 minutes, and hopefully there's more crews coming behind you, because it's very taxing to be inside of a building that's that hot.
Right. So Jody, can you tell us if you could pass along any advice to young graduates and their families, their parents especially, about how to focus on their trajectory in their career?
Well, my advice, like I was telling you earlier to my children, is, understand the difference between a job and a career. A career is going to support your family. A career is going to give you something in the end that you can draw on a retirement. And so I really tell my kids, whatever you're gonna do, you gotta like it. Because if you don't like it, it's like going to school and finding out that you don't like what you're doing and be stuck with it. That's not a good way to live. So I try to tell my kids, find out what you really want to do. And if you're not sure, test the waters a little bit. Go to college, get the basic classes out of the way, and then take some classes in some fields that you think you might be interested in, and see where, like the medical field, there's so many avenues you can take in fire. There is, you got prevention, you got paramedics, you got, you can promote in fire. I went in as a fireman and I retired as a chief. So it was very rewarding. So I would, like I say, for people who, whatever you're going to do, you know, it's like a vocation, you know, you got to love, you want to do it. It's an inspiration, like making clothes, man. Some people, yeah, that's cool, man. You know, I'm a woodworker on, you know, it's what I do. I love that. So, but I was able to raise my family and do things with a job that I enjoyed, that was rewarding and paid, and it still pays. So
Yeah.
it was very beneficial.
And I should add here that you did take some fire science classes right at PCC.
Oh yeah, I went to when I finally settled down. I was a wild one, I guess. I went through, you know, 69, 70, 71 was a pretty crazy time in South Pasadena. What a great place to grow up, though. I mean, we're still tigers, all of us. And that's something we're pride.
That's
But
great.
yeah, but yeah,
Thank you. No, thank you so much. It was a wonderful story. I really appreciate you coming and sharing it with us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for having me.
Great. Okay, so I'm moving on to a graduate from 1992. His name is Scott Lee. Scott, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Can you just give us a little bio from your South Pass years?
Yeah, I was born and raised in South Pasadena. So I also went to Calvary Preschool, went to Monterey Hills Elementary, went to, of course, the junior high and high school. So I was here the whole time, and it was kind of nice growing up with all the same people. Until I got to college, I went to UC Irvine. And then from UC Irvine, I went to grad school at UC Berkeley.
Right, and you had a passion for art,
Mm-hmm.
and you told me that you when you went to school you realized that optometry was okay too, right?
Yeah, basically what happened was from junior high on, I'd aspired to be a Disney animator. That was like the big thing for me. I love Disney movies. I love drawing. So that was my path. So I did a lot of drawing for fun through school. And then I majored in art when I went to UC Irvine. However, my original idea was to go to Cal Arts or Pasadena Art Center. But my parents were a little hesitant about me going to an art specific school. So I went to UC Irvine, did art there, and was able to take other classes to explore more things. But I concentrated on art to start with. And then while I was doing my art, I did some freelance work. And this is the first time I had started doing art for money. And once I started doing that, it started feeling more like work to me. And I just wasn't inspired to draw the things that people were asking me to, especially under the duress of a time deadline. You know, it's like, get this drawn by Tuesday. Like, I need more time. It's like, okay. Now that I have it, can you change this and this? Okay, fine, right? So it just was not fun anymore. So at that point, I said, no, I'm not going to do art as a career. I'll just keep it on the side. And then, and that's one of my cartoons. So eventually, I went into optometry because I was in my own eye doctor's exam, and I started thinking about it, like, this is actually kind of cool. I like this, right? So I shadowed my cousin, who's an optometrist, and the more I was exposed to it, the more I liked it. And so I decided to switch gears. I still had to complete my art major because this was after my junior year of college that I decided this. I was too far into it. And then I got this list of prerequisites I needed to take to get into optometry school. So I ended up taking those at Irvine Valley College because I couldn't get into any of the courses over at UC Irvine because I was an art major and not a bio major. So I split time between the two colleges, and then I got into UC Berkeley. After I graduated from UC Berkeley, I still continued to do art as I started to get ideas of eyeball-inspired cartoons. You can see they're single panel cartoons I started doing. I made a book, a collection of them, and I also contributed to the Maine National Magazine. They had me contribute cartoons to them for quite a few years. So amongst the optometric community, I'm well known. And let me just sidebar by saying I like seeing everyone in their glasses today. Those who don't have the glasses on, I'm sure you have either naturally good vision or you're still in denial. Which a lot of people are. So things like that kind of play into my humor for my cartoons. And so with the cartooning, I get to still do what I love on the side on my own terms. And for my job, I get to do something that's incredibly rewarding with helping people see better.
Yeah.
All right, I'm pulling up one more. Here we go. Oh, so this is the cover of your book.
Yes.
And you're self-publishing your books relatively successfully, right? Where is the venue that you're doing that?
Yeah, on Amazon.com. They have a self-publishing service, and it's a good deal because you get a lot more of the royalties than you would if you went through a publisher. And so I just spread the word through social media and through my cartoons in the magazine. And from there, I sold about 2,600 copies of my book. And that helped pay for a lot of my toys that I have in my man cave. So, all the things that my wife probably wouldn't have let me buy otherwise with our community money.
There you go. Okay, so now can you tell us a little bit about maybe what your experience was in South Pasadena? Did you have any pivotal people, influencers in your life that made it different?
In South Pas, yeah. I had the fortune of having Janet Anderson as not only my first grade teacher, but also my fourth grade teacher. She was doing a substitute teaching gig for first grade because our teacher went on a maternity leave. So we got her for an extended period of time. And then by the time I got to fourth grade, she became my permanent fourth grade teacher. So it was such a great joy to have her twice because I liked her so much. She was so much fun. She did so many creative things. She always made going to school really just a good experience. And just little things that she would do, like for birthdays, she would draw on the chalkboard a cake, a birthday cake with some candles, put little flames on them, and then everyone would blow, and then she'd erase the flames, and then she'd make little slices out of the cake and erase the little slice and have someone deliver it to one of the students. And for the one student who couldn't have chocolate, she drew another little side piece of cake that wasn't chocolate for that one student. So that was really cool.
That's great. And this is you right here, right?
Yes, that's me.
Yeah. That's great.
She called us her little munchkins.
And she called you Skotsky, right?
Skotsky, that's right. That was my nickname.
She gave you a little nickname. Well, that's great.
And there was one thing I remember giving her something. I used to write into Star Wars fan club, and they would send me autographed pictures. And I got 2 copies of Harrison Ford, and I know that she had a crush on Harrison Ford. So I decided to bring that picture in, and I gave her the spare, and she told me she stuck it on her fridge. She's very happy to have it.
You gave that to me. I didn't have it in my little.
I have. Can I share mine?
Yeah, of course. Oh wait. Kristen? Can you let him share? Scott Lee.
Okay.
There we go.
All right. Gotcha. Okay, so I was prepared with my own there. There it is. So, Larison. And I was so excited to give it to her because I remember her talking about him and how much she really liked him. So it was my pleasure to do that for him.
That's wonderful. All right. Thank you so much, Scott. What a great story. And you seem like a happy person, which I think is our ultimate goal for our students. If we can possibly help it, that's what we want, is happy people.
Exactly.
Great. Okay. Thank you, Scott. Okay.
You're welcome.
So finally, our last guest tonight who's going to speak graduated in 1974. And her name is Janet Anderson. Janet,
Hi.
are you here?
I am.
So tell us a little bit about your early days at the high school, or going through South Pass school system.
Well, first, I have to say I'm so glad I'm batting cleanup, just because I got to hear all these great graduates, and I feel like just end this now because Scott has me on such a high, that should be the end of it.
Well,
But
it's not. I'm
well-
holding you up to it.
Okay, your question?
My question is, tell me about your high school experience in South Pasadena.
Yeah, I was kind of a generalist. I didn't, unlike Haley, I didn't have a real focus on one particular aspect. My older sister and brother were both artists, so I kind of felt like I didn't get that gene. And at that time, and maybe even now, I sort of thought that you needed something kind of visual, something you could see that would tell you to do things. And I didn't really have that. But I really loved being part of student government and just joining in as many things as I could. And of course, the friendships and taking lots of interesting classes. At that time, for social science, we had mini courses. So in my junior year, I took 4 mini courses that I got to choose. And it was pretty inventive and a very cool opportunity.
And I feel like one thing I didn't touch on with everybody that I heard, and also from you, was that what's unique, one of the things that is unique about South Pasadena is the sense of community, because it's such a small group of people and you're all moving through it together. Once you get out of the elementary schools, it's just different than maybe going through LAUSD. But you, when you graduated, you went to what was it, the Saddleback Community College, right?
Yes.
And you didn't know what you wanted to do, but you knew you needed to get a basic degree, right?
Right. My parents weren't terribly directive. They were very supportive, but they didn't do our homework for us or tell us where to go to college. The only thing they said was, being children of the Depression and the war years and all of that, they said they wanted us to go to community college first. And it was kind of a practical thing on their part. And so I did that instead of going directly to a 4-year school. And it turned out to be great. It was very validating that I was capable in a different setting, that I was well prepared and could move on. And I started honing in on the classes that I thought I liked, but went kind of deeper in studying anthropology, sociology, psychology, all of those things. Got my AA, and that let me write my ticket to UCLA. I applied to 4 schools, got accepted to all. At that time, you could only apply to one UC. So I chose UCLA and then chose to go there, and I stayed there an extra year for graduate work, getting my teaching credential.
One of the really interesting things we talked about that I hope you can share was your feeling about moving into that field of work as it related to feminism at the time.
Right. I didn't think I wanted to be a teacher, although looking back, I know that every time we had to choose throughout K through 12, anytime we had to choose a career, I could never think of one. So my default was teacher because I had seen people teach. But I really didn't think that was a good career move. My dad didn't think so because he wanted me to earn a living, but I didn't think it was a good career move because I felt like the world was opening up so much, and to make a statement, I really should do something that was less traditional. But as it turns out, I ended up in volunteering when I was at UCLA at a middle school in LA. And then I thought, well, I'll teach. I got my credential and thinking I'll teach for up to 5 years while I decide what I really want to do. Well, guess what? I found out that I loved what I was doing. And instead of having something visual or tangible, I had to realize that what I had was a love for working with people and helping people develop and make better choices each time they had a chance. So it kind of caught me by surprise, but once I got going in education, I didn't want to stop.
And we're grateful for it. That's fantastic. So any words of advice to the parents out there? And now that you're in a non-official role, you can say whatever you want.
All right, let me let loose. I think things are different now than they were then, and we can use that to justify a lot of the choices we make. But I kind of thought my parents were a little too hands-off at the time, but I realized that was actually by design. They gave us the expectations, not specific expectations, but expectations of hard work, value system, and so forth. But then they let us carve out our own paths, and we all did it, and we all did it differently. My brother and sister are very successful, and they didn't fill out our college applications. I don't even think they asked where I was applying, except to help finance the application process. And they were there, they were supportive, but they gave us the framework, and then we had to do things. And I think that really helps kids have that feeling of self-efficacy and a sense that they really can do things, make choices. And this kind of ties back with Challenge Success, which is very dear to my heart and is a program at the high school that is so important to let people make mistakes. And I think it was Kai who was talking about, you try something, it doesn't work, you try something else. And I think that is such an important thing for growth and for learning about oneself in the process. And again, making better choices each time you move forward.
Yep, exactly. That's great. Thank you so much, Janet, for sharing your story with us and for being candid now
And
that
so-
you can.
All those grads.
Right. Okay. So I think now we can move into questions. Our questions, Kristen, magical person, is going to take over and field any questions anybody has.
I am. So far, I only have one, but if you do have more, please just put them in the chat to me. We'd love to hear your questions. Jenny asked me to just say a couple words too. I am the parent on the Challenge Success Committee that Ms. Anderson just commented on, and one of the parents. And I just agree. There's so many times we have talks in our meetings about there's so many different ways to get to where you want to go. And one of the big things with Challenge Success is, they show the path, and so many kids think it's a linear path and it just goes like this. And when Challenge Success really, talks to adults, like over 80% of the adults had a path that went like this to get to a place where they finally felt like they really fit and they found something that really worked for them. And I believe that, we've seen that tonight. I think all of these, everybody who's talked, we, except for the first young lady, she really knows what she wants to do, and that's awesome. And you're the 20% that knows, and that's
she's from an alien planet, I think.
But how great. I mean, I have a son who wants to be an actor, and he knows he wants to be an actor, and so he's going to school for acting. My other two, well, I can't even imagine what they're going to do at this point. And that's wonderful. And I love seeing these stories, and I'm hoping, through the years we can get some more stories out to the kids that are there, so they understand it's not just a linear path. It's really all over the place. So my good kitty says hi too. So I do have one question here. It's for Jody. And they wanted to know, did you do both forest and city fire, or did you start and stay with the city?
Am I on?
Yes.
Oh, no, I started with the city. Well, actually, I started with Cal Fire in Orange County. It was brush fires and stuff. And then I got a job with South Pasadena. But I spent the last 20 years fighting wildland fires, which was it's a whole different thing because you're involved in the environmental aspect of it, how fire can be good for the environment. One of my jobs was in fuels, was the reduction of fuels. So it wasn't always just fighting fires. So I love the wildland. That's where I grew up.
That's about setting fires, you mean, right? When you're talking about
setting fires.
Well, I wasn't joking. I'm talking about controlled burns.
No, yeah. No, that's what I did. I was a burn boss. I did the designs for some of the work in Big Bear and stuff, and that was my job. But yeah, we go out in a controlled environment, usually in the winter. Well, but you lose sometimes. That's just, you put fire in the environment, it's going to do what it wants to do, and that's things are changing. Obviously, I talk to some of my guys that are chiefs and captains now, and they tell me, Cap, it ain't like it used to be. They're getting really bigger and bigger. There's not as many, but they're huge. So there's a lot going on there as far as change in the environment. I hope I answered the question.
You did. You definitely did. And there's follow-up questions. So they're wondering if to get to where you said a lot of firemen in the city have to be paramedics now and go to school for that. But to do the forest fire work, do you go to community college for that? How do you get into that kind of work?
It's, other than CAL FIRE, which is a state agency, the federal government is very open, and it's extremely easy to get into. Use usajobs.gov, and you go in, and it's a 0462 series, wildland firefighting. You can get entry level as far as apprenticeship programs and stuff like that. There's a big demand. The problem is the pay is not as good as the city. And the reason is there's a lot going on in a city as far as you got to be so qualified in so many different fields. The federal government, if you're a hot shot, and you're out there and you're cutting line, and unless you promote up, so you start out as a firefighter, it's a little more demanding as far as being away from your home for weeks upon ends. I was gone at months at sometimes. So the city guys, it's a good job. They go home and they work 24 or 48. I think South Pasadena works now, and they're off for 4 days. But you're there for 48 hours. You might run 20 calls if you're in a busy station. So you don't get to sleep. And so it sounds like a good thing, but there's a real recovery. It's a very strenuous job to deal with the public constantly in that respect. But in the wildland, you can kind of get away from that, and it's a lot different. I enjoyed the wild. I've been places where most people never see, but I had to hike there. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's great. We don't have any more questions in the chat, but I just want to thank everybody for sharing their stories, unless somebody wants to raise their hand and ask it.
Can I say one more thing?
Of course.
If this person needs some advice or some things, that's what I do. I'm a mentor. That was one of the things I did in my fire service. I taught a lot of classes, everything. If this person wants to PM me, can you go through whatever means we can use, I will tell them what would help them. I don't know, females are more than welcome in the fire service nowadays. It's actually in the city, it's very good to have females, because you have, especially medics, because you deal with things that you need females to help other females and things. So there's a big opportunities there.
No, that's great.
So if they need to, yeah.
Yeah, I'll definitely. I was a mom who asked, but we'll let her know, and we'll make
tell
sure
her.
Yeah.
I had a lot of moms in South Pass. All the moms used to bring their kids to the fire station. Now kids wanted to be firemen. I remember that. That was a big thing. Working in the city that I grew up in and was raised, it was that was a lot of pride doing that. I still enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're having a block party next week, and the firemen said they'd come if they didn't have to go out on call. So we're all excited on our block. So
yeah, go tell the chief. He's a good guy. Just tell him, come on down.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, I know we've talked a little bit, and I think the school was talking about maybe having career day where we bring in some people. So we'll make sure we keep on to your number from Jenny. So if that
I have a letter from Mr. Penn asking me to come and speak in 1980 something at the high school. He was one of my favorite teachers.
That's fantastic. I love it. I love it.
Thank you.
Okay, Jenny, I'll throw it back to you.
Okay, I guess it was a very successful evening. I think we heard a lot of different sorts of stories, and thank you all so much for coming and listening. And I hope that through this, we can maybe send more positive messages to our children. I'm totally guilty of getting college crazy. So, nothing wrong with college, but I think we need to, I don't know, be broader in our expectations on how to get to the end. And really, I think I could sum up, it seems to me, that it's really about finding something that you love doing and following that. And I guess that's what we can share. So thanks again and good night.